First, read the rules and procedures. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicant will be given 10 minutes to present to the request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration, and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or member of the commission requests that the item be removed from consent and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. I do have one just short announcement, which is Jason Van Essen, who's normally right here beside me, is not with us tonight. His father-in-law passed away or kind of all of a sudden on Monday morning, and so if we do have questions, Bert Drost is here to help us. But our condolences to Jason. And I think a new member of the commission might be joining us.
So you can sit around the corner.
Okay. Let's just give him a second. Just 1 second. So, welcome Justin Lewis. He's our newest member of the commission, and Lisa Howard did fall off, so we thank Lisa for her work on the commission, and welcome Justin. I do need a motion to approve the minutes of the March 17th, 2022 meeting.
I'll move.
Thanks, Jan. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any abstentions? Oh, sorry. All right, thank you. I will now read the consent items. Number 1, request from KG Store 543 LLC, represented by Aubrey Gould, for designation of the Crescent Chevrolet rooftop sign at 555 17th Street as a local landmark. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to hear this item tonight? Anyone on the commission? All right, that will remain. Number 2, request from Eric Frost for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for a type 2 design alternative in accordance with City Code 135 for property located at 1125 63rd Street to allow for a driveway expansion that exceeds the maximum allowed front yard impervious area, 25% of front yard. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to hear this item tonight? Anyone on the commission? All right, number 2 will stay on consent. So the consent items are number 1 and number 2. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
I'll move consent.
Thank you, Dory. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. We do have one item for continuance. I'll read it quick. Number 3, request from RM Madden Construction, represented by Michael Madden, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for the following type 2 design alternatives in accordance with Chapter 135 to allow construction of a house type D in N5 neighborhood district, A and B. And the reason we need to continue this is that the address was incorrect, and so we have to redo it. Can I get a motion to continue that until April 21st, 2022?
I'll make a motion to continue item 3.
Thank you, Abby. All in favor of that motion, please raise your right hand. All right, on to the public hearing items. The first public hearing item is number 4, a request from Gerardo Perez for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for the following Type 2 design alternatives in accordance with Chapter 135 for property at 4120 Southeast 14th Street and 4115 Southeast 13th Street to allow construction of a storefront building type within MX3V District A through F. And Nick Tarpey will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Emily. Nick Tarpey, planning staff. So like Emily said, there's about 6 design alternatives that are in front of the commission tonight. Staff is recommending approval of 4 of them. And then there's two that have kind of a hybrid recommendation, or one that has a hybrid recommendation, and then one of them that staff is recommending denial of. So we can dig into those a little bit. So subject site here, 4120 Southeast 14th Street, about a quarter mile south of Watrous, on the west side of the street. This is the existing site. It's how it looks right now. You have an existing clothing store known as Modus Maryland. What the applicant is proposing to do is demolish the store and construct a completely new building. So we'll walk through the plans, show you what that looks like. There's also a single-family dwelling that is just to the west. It's on a separate parcel. That'll come into play a little bit later with some of the site improvements that are proposed. So here you can see on this page, this is a general layout of what's being proposed. So it's a little bit different than what exists now. You have a new construction building, about 3,400 square feet, with a new parking lot to the north, some streetscape improvements and the like. Here's some renderings of the elevations, some of the building design. You can see that. We'll get into that in a little bit as I go through the staff report. So digging into some of the relief here that's being requested, Part A, per city code, the applicant is required to have a primary frontage entrance, or a principal entrance along the primary frontage. So that means it would face Southeast 14th Street. As proposed, the applicant is proposing to have its primary entrance or its principal entrance facing the north towards the parking lot. So that would require relief in that sense. Staff has been supportive of that design alternative request because they're proposing this large vestibule that faces the north, really is a focal point and really is allowing both access from the street side as well as the parking lot side to join together in a principal entrance. It doesn't necessarily face the street, but it still really meets the intent of the design ordinance. Part B, this is for the building elevation. So we're going to dig into the site a little bit here, and you'll see, show some photos. So as you can see, this is the existing site. There's some major grade changes at the site, and you can see that it would be kind of difficult to site a building flat. So as proposed, the main entrance to the building is actually going to be 2 feet above the sidewalk elevation. That would require relief for the planning and design ordinance because all the sidewalk elevations are supposed to be within 1.5 feet of the primary entrance. And so staff has been supportive of that because of the grade changes at the site. Part C, the applicant is requesting a setback of about 8 feet from the property line. This building is being constructed in the MX3 zoning district, which would require that the build-to zone for the building be between 0 and 5 feet. So it is about 3 feet outside of there. Again, citing some of the grade changes at the site, staff recognizes that it was kind of difficult to site the building, some of the retaining walls, the parking area that needed to be constructed, and so staff is generally supportive of that Type 2 design alternative request. Staff has also noted that the applicant is proposing a front walkway, as well as some streetscape improvements, and a really transparent front facade that really activate the street in a way that's really similar to if you would have sited it a little bit closer to the property line. So staff is supportive of that request. You can see some of that if we go back to the site sketch here. As you can see, they have that front walkway that's being proposed, some streetscape elements, and then if we go back to the building elevations, you'll see that they have a pretty transparent front facade that really engages with the street pretty well. Part D of the relief, this is really related to Part C. So according to the planning and design ordinance, buildings are required to have a primary frontage coverage of at least 60%. Because most of the building is being sited outside of that build-to zone that we talked about just now, it's not going to be able to meet that requirement, but per the intent of the ordinance, per that transparency that we talked about, that walkway that they're proposing, and some of that landscaping, staff thinks it interacts with the street pretty well, and we're able to recommend approval of that design alternative request. Part E of what the applicant is requesting is not really related to the new construction that's going on. It's more related to the single-family dwelling that's just to the west of the site of the retail building. And I'll show you what's being proposed here. So the applicant is proposing a new driveway that would serve the parking needs for the single-family dwelling here. Right now, and I'll show the aerial. So right now, as you can see, there's an existing driveway that comes off the Southeast 14th frontage, and for the vehicle parking, the applicants, they use this area coming off Southeast 14th to the east of the house for a lot of their parking needs. It's where they have an existing garage. With the site improvements, this is all going to be demoed, and it's really going to be reconfigured. So an access from the Southeast 14th is not really going to be feasible. And so they are proposing a driveway here at 4115 Southeast 13, just to the west. But per the design ordinance, per our parking section of Chapter 135, vehicular parking has to be out of the front setback, so that would be out of this rectangle here, which you can see me drawn with this cursor on my screen. And so staff would request that the driveway be extended to past outside of that front setback, and so the vehicular parking would be staged behind the front building line. And so that's really the relief that the applicant is seeking tonight. Staff is not in support of that request. The applicant has stated in some informal conversations that there is a grade change at the site, and it'd be kind of difficult to be able to extend the driveway down towards next to the house. Staff, as planning staff, we've talked to engineering staff, and while there is somewhat of a challenge there, and it would be a little bit difficult, engineering staff does believe there is a feasible solution to be able to extend that driveway. And then also staff has done kind of a rough analysis of the surrounding context and the surrounding neighborhood, and really extending that driveway up to the house would really be in character with the existing neighborhood. Of all the houses that have driveways that don't really go into a front-loaded garage, the driveways at least extend through the house and oftentimes into the rear of the properties. So staff, we would really request that the applicant would do the same to be in conformance with the existing neighborhood. And then the final piece of the design alternative requests was the request to waive the undergrounding of the utility lines. I know as the commission, you guys have seen a lot of that the last couple of years, and you're pretty familiar with that. This was an interesting project where we, as planning staff, we got to offer a hybrid recommendation with that, and I think we came up with a relatively good solution, so I'll walk you through it. Pull up some of the existing site photos here. So this photo here, I think, is a relatively good summary, or let's go to this. Yeah, this photo here is a pretty good summary of all the lines that we have at the site. So right now, there's an existing line that comes from across Southeast 14th Street and feeds into a street light that currently sits at the property. And then from there, there's an overhead line that runs to a utility pole in the southeastern corner of the site. And then there is a line from this pole that runs to this billboard, which is actually located on the property just to the south. And then additionally, as the site exists today, there's a service line that extends into the building. So the applicant has come and they have requested waiver of all the undergrounding at the site. As staff, we have been in communication with Mid-American Energy, and we asked them, what's the feasibility of undergrounding lines at the site? There's going to be a new construction here, a completely new building. As staff, we feel it's appropriate if there's a building that's being completely demolished and one that's going to be constructed in its place, that the new service would be run underground. We think that's a legitimate request. And so in our discussions with Mid-American Energy, we talked about that a little bit, and Mid-American has informed us with their revenue credit system that with a new construction of a new building, the revenue credit would offset any costs that the applicant would have to pay in terms of siting a new transformer and running the new service into the building, to the new building. And then they've also informed us the undergrounding of the street line that runs across Southeast 14th Street and running it to the existing street light would cost about $5,000 to $7,000. And so in total, staff has recommended that the new service line into the building be installed underground. The street light line that runs from the other side of Southeast 14th, that would also be buried because Mid-American has said if the service is going to be upgraded here, this wooden pole would be upgraded to a new steel pole, and so staff feels that that would be appropriate if site improvements are going to be going in at this property. Staff has allowed a waiver of the undergrounding of the lines, the line from this pole that stands on the property to the billboard to the south, because it's not on the subject property, and it doesn't really fit with the scope of the work that's being proposed here tonight. And I just want to run through a couple photos just to show some of the site context here. So this is the existing building. The new building is pretty much going to be in its place. And so as staff has recommended, the line that comes across Southeast 14th Street, that would be undergrounded as part of the site improvements. This street light here that's currently wooden would be converted into a steel pole. The service line into the building would be installed underground with a new transformer that would be offset by Mid-American's Revenue Credit Program. And then the line that comes from the street light that feeds to this utility pole here, that would also be undergrounded as part of that $5,000 to $7,000 Mid-American estimate that they gave us. And then here is the rear of the property. It's some photos more related to what we were talking about with the driveway conversation a little bit earlier. You can see there is a grade change here, but then you can also see the neighbor next door is dealing with a very similar grade change, and they were able to extend the driveway down into the site and leading to a garage. One last item I did want to pull up. No, I don't think that was included. Okay. And then this is a map. This is the context map that shows notification, the neighbors that were notified. We did not receive any comments. I did get a phone call this afternoon just inquiring about the project, but nothing more formal than that. So with that, I will take any questions at this time.
Okay, I'll have a host of questions I'm curious on. So the driveway issue exists because we're saying that it's a frontage issue. The driveway has to extend beyond the front corner of the structure.
Correct,
right?
that's correct.
But isn't it currently the back of the structure?
It is, yes.
So we're saying that because of this, we're now flipping what we consider to the front, and we're adding a cost on them in order for them to accommodate this other property?
Yeah, so with the demolition that's being proposed, they're installing a new, and I'll show the site plan here. You can see what's being proposed. So with these site improvements, they're proposing a new parking lot here, and it's really different than this drive that juts out right now. And so with this parking lot and the new building, it really would not be feasible for them to maintain that access. And so the applicants are requesting that, okay, we close this off because this part of the property, this part of the site is really going to be used for the store. And so we'd like to use the Southeast 13th Street access. And so they propose a driveway, but that driveway, like I said, it needs to extend all the way to the house.
But right, okay, I'm sorry, that may be another thing that I must have missed. Is the owner of both the same?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and number two, but yeah, I guess my challenge is here, so we're saying that they're hitting this requirement because we're also saying that they're now agreeing that they've switched where the front of their house is, because right now, what we're saying, if this construction didn't go up, and it's right now a rear driveway, and they just wanted to put in a pad to a rear driveway and had no other driveway, their other driveway is gone, this would not be an issue, is that right? It's only
correct.
because we flopped where we believe the front is.
Yes, I mean, and then they're eliminating the driveway, and they would still like some kind of vehicular access to the property.
Yep, but if they would, if I got a house and I don't have a front driveway, and I have a rear driveway, right here, I have now a rear driveway coming in, and we're just saying, well, no, we now think that's a front, is what we're saying. That's the argument?
Yeah, because the site improvements, basically, they've kind of reoriented the access point to the house. That's correct.
Yeah, but we haven't flipped the house.
Sure.
It's still the back.
But in terms of thinking about vehicular access, yes, that is flipped, but the house, as you said, has not.
It's got, okay, so the house is staying in the same place. Okay, so the other piece, cost differential, so let's assume that we are okay forcing them to flip their concept of their house. Fine. Next, because down there, there is a lot of change in grade there, and I agree that the house next to them does have something all the way to the house. However, we're saying that our engineering staff has said that that isn't a problem. Have they provided engineering opinions otherwise?
No, they have not.
Okay, so basically we're just assuming That they're like, all right, their engineers aren't, there's no one's registered opposition. We're just saying, we think it's fine, no big deal.
Yeah, so and that's kind of leads me into a good point. So we've consulted with our engineering staff, and I have talked with the applicant a little bit, and they actually might, I've invited them, if you can prove necessarily that, hey, this would not necessarily be feasible in this situation, you're welcome to come to the commission, but we have not received documentation otherwise that this would really be infeasible.
The cost differential you referenced, so you referenced the cost differential, what is it?
In terms of the driveway construction,
Yeah, so what's the extra cost that would have to be taken on by the applicant for extending it?
I don't think I mentioned that for the driveway. I might have been talking about that for the utilities.
Oh, I thought earlier on we said that, okay, then I misheard. I'm sorry, I
You're
took
good.
a note there that I thought that we said that that there shouldn't be an extra cost. I was curious what the cost differential was, but that's fine. And then the last one, well, sort of last, sorry. The revenue credit system. So the 5 to 7K is not eligible under the revenue credit system. Why?
Because it doesn't provide service to the building. So that would, if the revenue credit is for new constructions of buildings specifically. So the
Okay.
5 to 7K is for undergrounding the line to the street light, and that's not a new service necessarily into a building. The revenue credit is for you're constructing a new building. Mid-AMs, like we understand how much energy you're going to use, we can project that out, and so over a period of 3 to 5 years, we can reimburse you for those costs.
Gotcha. Okay, so the theory is that the pole, so the new metal pole that goes in, that's a city pole, and that's a city cost of that city pole. And even though we're still going to be trenching a line in, we're going to be dropping a line in, and then it's no cost to the applicant because it's a new service on the one line. The same trench or the same bore that's taking that other line, we're going to have to pay, we're going to have to charge the 5 to 7K for that same activity? Or are there two different bores or trenches going on?
That's a good question. So there's the initial boring that's going to be going under Southeast 14th to the streetlight, and then there's a separate boring that would be they have to site a new transformer on the property to accommodate the service into the building. So yeah, they would be two separate undergrounding jobs.
We know there's two undergrounding jobs, or we're saying that they would be bundled if we were actually requiring Mid-American to actually plan this?
I'm trying to remember the email. I should have included the email in the PowerPoint here. It would be two separate jobs. So the street light is one job, and then the service into the building is a separate job per Mid-American.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes and no, but I'll let it roll for me.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Usually when we're talking about the requiring people to pay, we talk about a percent of the project. Do you have the percent?
We do not.
Okay.
The applicant might be able to present that tonight.
Okay.
As staff, we thought if you're constructing an entirely new building, we thought it was appropriate if you're going to have a service that it would be undergrounded into the building.
Yeah, thank you.
And actually, last question, so out of curiosity, with the ordinance change that came through, and granted, while I wasn't necessarily a fan of where we ended up, even though I'm obviously a fan of having something, is this actually, if all we say is this is actually poses a significant impact, doesn't that actually, this is no longer a requirement, isn't it?
Sorry, could you rephrase that? Sorry.
Yeah, so we again, I know I was aggressively painful to Bert and everyone else on this, right? To say, let's get an actual defensible process for identifying when we need underground. We passed one. I'm not a fan of what we ended up with, but if I'm understanding what we ended up with, if all of a sudden the applicant just says, I now have a significant impact as a result of this undergrounding, significant not being defined yet, then because this is not within an undergrounding overlay, we actually can't require it. Is that right?
I believe, if I understand you correctly, you could use that as your rationale to grant the Type 2 design alternative. When staff considered it as a Type 1, we felt because there's a new building involved, we thought it was reasonable for them to bear the service to the building. But it's definitely within the commission's purview, if you feel that that criteria has been met, to go ahead and grant it.
I'm an aggressive fan of undergrounding. Not getting me wrong there. I just want to make sure I'm also more aggressively a fan of, equitable uniformity. Yeah, okay.
And I would also just like to add, too, there are other lines on the site that staff is okay with them waiving the undergrounding. It's there's a pole that's going to be allowed to remain, and then the line to the billboard to the south. And staff saw that. We were like, this is outside of the project scope. This would be okay to remain. So we tried to offer a hybrid recommendation there.
Any other questions?
Well, I was just going to say, some of these questions, it might help if we heard from the applicant.
Right.
You know, I think some of these questions might be answered.
Yeah, good point, Jan. Thank you, Nick. And is the applicant present? Would you like to come up and present? You have 10 minutes. Please state your name, address, and then sign in when you're done.
Property address or my home address?
You can, well. What?
Either? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
And my name is Tyler Vincent, and I am an intern architect on the project. Okay. My name is Tyler Vincent, and I am an intern architect on the project. And what was the question again, to refresh me?
You're allowed to present the item, so you can just kind of give the reasoning why you want to waive the items that the city is not, allowing you to waive at this point. So that would be item E and item F. Item E, they're denying, and item F, there's a hybrid situation being proposed. I guess you could go to the staff recommendation, Bert.
Okay. So when it comes to the parking, originally when we were looking at it, we saw the initial grade on the property, so that's why we were wanting to waive the parking requirement to go farther back than what it was, just because there would be a lot of demo work with the grade. But looking at how it flattens out at the back, I think we'd be able to accept that we could push the driveway farther back to accommodate that and get it outside the front build zone. And when it comes to the undergrounding of all the electric, I did not know that it was being considered 2 jobs. I thought it was just 1 job, and I thought the whole price was being reimbursed to the owner over the course of the years. And I may have missed an email on that.
Yeah. Start singing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
While we're waiting for that, can we ask a question while we're waiting for this part? Is that all right?
Sure.
So I want to make sure, you mentioned on the parking item, right? So if staff recommendation is approved, that would mean that you would have to have a parking pad that is farther east than the far west corner of the house. right? Which would indicate that you'd have to have enough room there for the parking that you would need. And if this house here, we'd have to have at least 2 stalls, I believe. And the stalls cannot extend beyond the west corner of the house. Is that correct?
Yes, with how the house sits on the property, there should be enough space to bring the driveway in and get more to the side of the property or of the home to get outside of that build limit.
Okay, and so you've looked into that and you're happy with saying, yep, we can definitely put what we need east of the far west side of the house?
Yes.
Sweet, okay.
And then looking at the email that is being shown on the screen, I came onto the project after this date, so I did not know about these 2 options.
So Chris, the question you asked was about subsection E, right? Are you in agreement with that? Did I miss that? So you are in agreement with E?
Yes.
Because so this is the part of the impact I'm curious about, right? So sub E means you would have to put a parking pad forward onto the yard where we know we have a grade change, and it sounds like we aren't entirely clear. It sounds like there may be access to difference of opinion as to whether or not there's a significant cost in moving an actual impervious pad up there with everything from runoff to grade change and everything else. It seems like there's access to that being expensive, which I don't think it sounds like we have any knowledge of it right now. That's where I guess where my concern is. So if we're saying, yep, we're good with E, that means you can't move that pad further back unless I'm misunderstanding the
Oh,
requirement.
okay. I'm sorry. Before I came on the project, on the map where it shows the property, it was only, the original driveway was only being placed 24 foot onto the property.
Yep.
And once I got onto the project and I was looking at the images and seeing the site, I saw that that was a lot of a grade change to it. And so we moved it farther back in consultation with Nick. I haven't got to resubmit the plans yet for it. And so we're going to push the driveway back to where it's a little bit flatter and get it out of that front setback for the property.
Gotcha, okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
Oh, no problem. I haven't walked the site, I understand. I mean, but as a PE, I guess I have concerns to make sure that we actually do know full cost before we agree to something that we don't really know impact on. That's my only personal concern.
Okay.
That's the one where I'm not entirely sure I understand what we're debating, if we're all fully clear on what prices we're debating there. That's just my concern and why I asked about E. The F was, yes, definitely to this street piece, and I guess I'm reading this. Unfortunately, I'm not a lawyer, I guess, or luckily, and I guess I don't entirely, it's not entirely clear to me I understand the cost here either, which means this also looks a little confusing. So it's not clear that we actually understand the impacts of F either or Y.
Can I chime in, Emily?
Yeah.
Is this something we'd want to continue? Because I think what Chris is saying, that if you haven't had your own engineer estimate the cost of doing this, then we're just relying on the city. But I don't know, Bert, do you want to chime in?
I guess the other option for them would be to just not add that new driveway from southeast 13th Street, to just extend a new driveway from the new parking lot, so the driveway and the required off-street parking is located on the east side of the house. But I think from a business perspective, they don't want to have somebody's residential driveway going through their parking lot, so they're wanting to move that driveway to southeast 13th Street to do that. And what I'm hearing them say is they knew they had to do a 24-foot paving pad, but they didn't realize that that had to be out of the front yard setback. So once they heard that, he said they were willing to extend it further to the east. And I know you're concerned that they don't necessarily know how much extra that's going to cost, but does that cost concern you to do the extra paving further east?
It does not.
If it was $100,000, would it concern you?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's where my concern is, right? We could be at like, oh, that's 20 more bucks, or that could be like 120,000 bucks. Those two can concern me.
there would be another option for them. They don't have to have it be a full 20 or 20 feet, 24 feet wide. They could narrow it down to 8 feet wide to just, so it might even be the same amount of concrete, just in one longer stretch. So that's another option for them. Because all they're required to provide is one off-street parking space outside of a front yard area.
And I know I've caused something that would probably cause Jason to completely go bonkers by now. I know I've gone way out of process here, but I think where I'm wanting to go is probably where Jan has recommended, which is it doesn't sound like we have all the numbers here. I'd be very uncomfortable voting on something where we don't have everyone clear on what everything is, because this is an interesting paragraph in itself. I guess I would, sorry, I know we have a process. I'll wait, sorry.
Would you like to wait 2 weeks and come back on April 21st? Then you would have time to put together the cost estimate for the driveway and look into the utility area a little more.
And my name is Gerardo. I'm the owner of the property on this here. What was the question? Sorry, I couldn't hear it.
He was wondering if you'd be interested in a 2-week continuance, so the commission would defer it tonight to the April 21st Plan and Zoning Commission meeting, and that would allow you to get a cost estimate for extending the driveway further east and for to look into the utility burial a little more.
Okay. And what is my other option on E as of right now? 'Cause I think that's the one. I mean, I guess what else could we do about E right now? 'Cause I'd prefer not to go
Sure.
to the next one just so we can continue the project.
Okay. Yeah, so right now you just extend the paving here, so you more or less double the amount of concrete.
That shouldn't be an issue. So we would be willing to extend the concrete to up to this point right here, or wherever. We would be willing to extend the concrete to here.
Can you speak into the mic?
Sorry.
Yeah.
We would be willing to extend the concrete all the way up to about here. Or what is our requirement? How far do we have to go?
You have to be able to. You have to be able to fit a vehicle in that, behind that front yard setback. So the standard length is 17 feet. So you have to pave 17 feet from the front of the house to fit a car length. So 8 by 17 is the standard space. So you have to have at least that type of pad behind that front yard, out of that front yard setback.
And what is that front yard setback?
I think it's about 48 feet roughly. So right as you have it extended now, extends about 24 feet into the yard. You need to extend it at least another 24 to get to the edge of the house, and then another 17 beyond that to be able to fit our standard car length, standard parking spot.
It may just because I sucked at geometry, but I'm really uncomfortable with us negotiating this right here on something that has potential economic impact. I don't, that could be a real cost to you. I mean, is there some other path we could take of saying we can approve all the other stuff and just defer D and E or E and F?
I'd defer to legal on that. I'm not sure if that's an option.
Thank you for asking the question. In this instance, since the applicant has indicated they would not like to continue it, I would not have you parsing it out into different pieces. That would be the effect of continuing a portion of it. So consider all or none at this stage of the game with the information you have available.
Yeah, thank you. Since the applicant has indicated they do not want to continue, I think we can honor that. And if the applicant is in agreement with E, which they said they were, then I think we can also honor that. Unless there's an opposing opinion on the commission, which I will welcome.
No, I'm in agreement with that. We cannot make a case for the applicant. The applicant has to make their own case before this commission. So I'm willing to move forward on this.
Okay, and are we good on F as well? Can we?
I have a question on F.
Yep.
Oh,
Sorry. I couldn't tell who was talking.
is it correct that the total cost to the applicant is in the $5,000 to $7,000?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So, in the long term, from Mid-American, they have their revenue credit program, which is something that funds, in terms of reimbursement, services into new construction buildings. And so, over a period of 3 to 5 years per conversations with Mid-American, typically they see 3,000 to 4,000 square foot buildings, retail type buildings. They have an idea of how much energy those buildings consume. And so through that, they can project out, up front, the applicant would have to front this cost or burden this cost. And then over a roughly 3 to 5 year period, typical of most projects, they couldn't really pencil it out for this specific project, but typically they see similar projects, they can make an estimate. Over time, through the revenue credit program, they would be reimbursed for that.
Okay. And then the electrical infrastructure work that would happen would be undergrounding the line under Southeast 14th, installing a transformer, and undergrounding the line from that pole to the next one to the south.
Correct.
Okay.
Wait, I want to make, sorry, Fran.
Can I ask the applicant, what's the cost of the construction of the building approximately?
Approximately about 420,000.
Thank you.
So that falls well below the percentage of cost that we typically use, yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So the line underground, which is the 5 to 7, which is not eligible for the revenue piece, right? Fine, that's 5 to 7. But I thought what you just said there was slightly different, where you're saying that actually the applicant has to front load the cost of the new transform and the undergrounding, but then they get reimbursed through their bill.
That's correct.
And the cost of that, so the cash outlay of that piece is, what are they actually paying for that first upfront cost that they then get back on their bill?
We did not get that from Mid-American because they couldn't tell, the building hadn't been constructed yet, and so they didn't know how much it would cost when we were asking them kind of preliminary in the site plan process. So they couldn't give us an estimate for that, for installing the new transformer, no.
Okay, so it isn't, as we said before, it isn't like a fully, they're loaning it to us, then we pay it back over time. So it's not a lease own, it's basically we are paying it, and then we're theoretically make our money back.
Right.
They're giving us a projection of back. Okay.
And sorry if I'm belaboring things here. Is the applicant asking for relief for that 5 to 7 or for more than that 5 to 7,000?
They're asking for the relief entirely. So they want to install the new electrical service into the building, wants to be above ground, as opposed to installing a new transformer. And then also the 5 to 7 that you were talking about. They just want to basically, you saw the existing conditions, and they want to, with the new building, retain that condition.
Okay, and we don't know the dollar value of that.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? Okay. We'll move forward with the rest of the. Oh.
I do have one question, and I don't know if it's really germane, but I'm curious what's actually going into the building after it's built.
So currently there's a clothing shop called Moines. It's actually owned by my parents. So it's like quinceañera dresses, wedding dresses, baptism, boots, and things of that sort. So retail.
Okay, so same business going back in?
Correct. It'd be the same business going back into the same location.
Awesome.
A new building. Sorry.
Awesome, thank you.
All right. We're going to move on with the public hearing. So are there any audience members who wish to speak in favor of this item this evening? Any opposed or neutral? Any further questions for staff? And any final words from you?
We're just trying to do whatever we can to complete the project as efficiently and we can bring up the value in the entire neighborhood. And we think that this will be a big impact to our location. I mean, it's a complete new building compared to what we have there now. I think it's a lot of renovations, there's a lot of grading issues that we're working with, and we've probably been working on this project now a year and a half with different architects and engineers to try to make it work, and civil engineers. So I think.
Can I ask one final question? I'm sorry, so you said you have a 420, the budget for this was?
420,000.
In the 420,000, does that account for Mid-American's upfront cash impact of their undergrounding a new transformer?
No, it does not. We just got that estimate 2 weeks ago, I think, or a week and a half ago. So it does not account for that.
Do we know what that estimate was? I mean, because normally this would be in the order of 120 is what we've seen before. Is it that?
From what I remember, it's about 17,000, closer to $18,000.
Only 18 for the undergrounding of a new service into it with a new transformer?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing, and commissioners,
I'll move staff.
thank you, Francis. There's a motion on the floor to move staff. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, raise your right hand. Abstentions? It carries 8-1, sorry, 801. Thank you. All right, number 5 is our final item this evening. Request from Pridecraft Custom Homes, represented by Jason Jurin, for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for following type 2 design alternatives in accordance with Chapter 135 for property located at 1524 East Pleasant View Drive to allow construction of house type B in N3A Neighborhood District A and B. And Kyle will be presenting this item. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Kyle Larson, member of Planning Staff. As Emily mentioned, Pridecraft Custom Homes is proposing to build a new home, a house B, in an N3 district on Pleasant View Drive. They're seeking 2 type 2 design alternatives. There's a map of the subject property. It lies on the north side of East Pleasant View Drive. This is just east of Southeast 14th Street on the south side of Des Moines. It's currently a vacant lot. There is a remnant of a former home there, a standing detached garage that will be demolished to make way for the new home. Here's a photo of the site. You can see kind of the remnants of what was a home before. Like I said, that fence and detached garage will be demolished to make way for the new home. Here's a couple of photographs to give you a little site context of the street and the existing neighborhood surrounding the subject site. Predominantly single-family House B style homes in this area. Here are the plans provided by the applicant for the new home to go on this property. You can see it has a 2-car attached garage facing the street. And a little bit hard to make out, but this is the site plan for the property. As I mentioned earlier, they're seeking 2 type 2 design alternatives. The first one being to allow an attached garage with an overhead door that comprises 45.7% of the front facade width, where only 30% of that front facade width is allowed by code. The second design alternative is related to the required sidewalk. They're seeking sidewalk waiver to not install a sidewalk along their street frontage. This is a 57-foot wide lot, so they would be required to provide a 5-foot sidewalk for that 57-foot lot frontage. Staff is recommending approval of the first type 2 design alternative for the garage width on the front facade. However, because this is identified in the MOVE DSM plan as a priority 1 sidewalk, our planning staff has consulted with the traffic division regarding that waiver, and the traffic engineer is not willing to provide that sidewalk waiver. So the applicant is seeking your approval for that waiver tonight. Are there any questions for me regarding the project?
Emily? Yeah. Question. Can you show the picture again of the street so we can see what other sidewalks are on the street? I didn't catch the visual.
Absolutely. This block, it's a fairly long block on East Pleasant View here. The only sidewalk that is on this block currently is what you see here in this photograph. And you just see the front facade of this home here with the tan car and the garage. That's a relatively new build within the last 2 or 3 years, and they did install that sidewalk when that house was built. Other than that, this block is void of sidewalks. So
Okay.
I can show the other.
Yeah, that was my question, that we did, or it looks like there was a requirement for that other house to build a sidewalk. So the sidewalk has started.
Correct, yeah, and that's kind of the intent of the requirement for the sidewalk, is to fill in, proliferate the sidewalk grid throughout Des Moines incrementally as development occurs.
So was it required on the other house that we saw, or was it something they decided to do? Just wondering about precedent that was set, I guess.
I didn't look into that building permit case. I do believe that there's a chance that house was built prior to the new code adoption, though, so it could have been installed at the discretion of the builder, but I don't know that for a fact.
Thanks.
That building, though, the 1533 we're talking about, I mean, seems to look exactly like this plan, doesn't it? I mean, you've got a large garage, you've got the actual side of the house, and we've got driveway with the sidewalk. I mean, so it looks exactly the same,
It's a
right?
very similar style home, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Emily?
Yep.
Do you, when you say 57 feet of sidewalk, what portion of that is going to be the driveway?
Is it an 16 or 18? 20 feet drive. 20.
20 feet wide?
20 feet wide drive, so there is a sidewalk that is paved through that section. It's thicker because of the traffic
Right.
going across it, so then you'd have, approximately 37 feet of sidewalk, that 5-foot sidewalk.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Did
Any
we
other
get a
questions?
cost estimate on that at all? If we required the sidewalk, or do we typically do that? I don't remember.
We typically don't ask for that as staff. Maybe the builder has a better idea. That may be a question that he can answer when he takes the podium.
Wasn't sidewalk is one of those that cost can't be a factor in it, isn't that right, if it's a type 1?
If it's
Is there-
Bert knows, yeah.
The cost really isn't one of the criteria that can be considered by staff, but the commission, I guess if it was like a really long sidewalk and the cost was exorbitant, then you could definitely use that as a criteria for denying it. But
Yep.
Can you show me the view of the house again,
Absolutely, yes.
or the property? Now, is the sidewalk exactly on this side of the street, or is it the other side?
The sidewalk would be, so it's likely that this fence was installed fairly close to that front property line.
Okay.
So the sidewalk would be kind of in front of where that fence is currently placed right now.
Okay.
And it'd give you, a 3 to 5 foot parking area between the curb and the sidewalk. That's in the right of way.
Okay. And then my other question is, the new build that is on there, Is that on the same side of the street or the opposite side?
It would be going on this lot that you see in the photo,
Okay.
which is on the north side. It's that lot circled in yellow there. It's on the north side of East Pleasant View Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so opposite. Okay. So for the full extent of this street, there's no other sidewalks on the side you're building on, correct?
Correct, yeah. There's no sidewalk currently on the north side of East Pleasant View Drive. That sidewalk that you saw in that photograph, if you pick up my cursor here,
Yeah.
it's just in front of this house,
And that would be the only one on the street with a sidewalk, correct?
existing,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
So, and I think I'm sort of messing this up with case number 3, which was continued, but this is a priority 1 area for sidewalks in the city. I think, like in case number 3, I think that they said it was going to be installed on the north side. Do we know what the plans are for the city of that priority 1 street? Is it going to be on both sides or one side or the other?
So for this item, the traffic engineer did say that there are no plans currently for improving East Pleasant View Drive that would add sidewalk in the next 10 to 20 years.
Even though it is a priority 1?
Right. So in this case, you kind of fall back on that sidewalk requirement to fill in the gaps as development occurs ahead of any potential city project.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
Applicant, are you present? Would you like to present? You have 10 minutes. State your name, address, and then you can sign in on the form when you're done talking.
Jason Duran, Pridecraft Custom Homes. My address is 1004 Northeast 19th Street, Grimes, Iowa, 50111. So the one thing I'll say about the sidewalk, and I don't know all the rules, I haven't read them, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but one of the big things I've understood is that it's kind of has to do with a lot of schools. With So what I understand is that if you're near a school, that it kind of comes into play as what's a priority 1. That's what I understand is one of the big criteria. The closest school here is Weeks Middle School, and as you can see, you'd have to cross 14th Street, Park Avenue, and Indianola to get to that school. So I mean, I just don't think it's very likely that people are going to be walking that route to and from school. And then there, like we already talked about earlier, I don't need to go into that again. There's really not a whole lot of sidewalks in this neighborhood right now. Doesn't sound like that there's a big plan to put the sidewalks in anytime in the near future. So that was my rationale on trying to get the waiver request for the sidewalks.
All right, any questions for the applicant?
What is the cost to put the sidewalk in?
Probably around $1,000, give or take.
And the whole project cost is?
The whole project cost would probably be around $220,000.
So half a percent
Right,
of cost?
right.
All right, thank you. Are there any members of the audience present wishing to speak in favor of this item? Any opposed? Or neutral? All right, seeing none. Are there any further questions from the commissioners?
It's my first day, sorry, y'all. So I have questions. So it looks like we've required it before on the street. Has there ever been an instance that we have waived it? I guess, yeah, that's my question. Just anywhere else. So is the standard new houses being built going forward must have sidewalks? And if that's the case, I just want to know if there's ever been an instance that we have waived it.
I think Kyle can speak to that.
Yeah, I know the commission obviously looks at each item case by case to see what, different context of the neighborhood might be in terms of that sidewalk network being more predominant or not. But there have been a few cases where I believe the sidewalk has been waived in residential areas. One particular case that I do recall was a corner lot, so they would have had to install sidewalk on both frontages, which would have been a fairly substantial linear amount of sidewalk to be poured, and a fairly more substantial cost. I do recall the commission waiving one of the street frontages in that case, and just having the applicant pour it on, I believe it was in front of the house, and then that side of the house did not get the sidewalk. So again, I think there have been a few cases, but as a staff member, I can't really go against the code myself. That's really the role of the commission, so.
I guess I'll just add some input here, because I've been on this for a few years. I thought we had a sidewalk task force, and somebody was going to make some recommendations. We spent a lot of time talking about sidewalks, and I think on this case, we have to start somewhere. And, we've even joked about, sidewalk to nowhere, when we were talking about industrial parks, but I personally believe that I think we have to start somewhere, and I think that's what the city's trying to do. So I'm going to support staff on not waiving the sidewalk, but.
Is the applicant still here, right? Now, if we do require the sidewalk, will it significantly increase where you build the site, where you build the driveway? Would it have to shift any of the housing back? I guess, is there any logistical concerns that the sidewalk would affect you, I guess?
As far as logistical concerns, no. I mean, basically, if the sidewalks are there or not there, it's pretty much the same logistical for me as far as doing that. Earlier when you were talking about waiving sidewalks, I don't know if you were just specifically talking about priority one or if you're just talking about in general. Yeah, because I've had 3 houses I've built before where they have waived the sidewalks for that. But then I think they tried to streamline it a little bit more, coming up with the priority 1, 2, 3 levels here. And like I was pointing out before, my reference is that, okay, even though this is labeled priority 1, I think it's probably because it's within a certain radius of a school is why it's level 1. I can't really attest to the fact why this is level 1, to be honest with you, because, to me, like I said, it's not close where anybody would be walking to and from that school. So I don't know, on paper it's a priority 1, but I don't see why it's a priority 1 in my opinion.
I may be incorrect on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's also within bus routes, and there's most likely a bus route that runs on Southeast 14th.
Right. Yeah, so that might be the reason why, so.
I do think to Jan's point, there has been significant time spent on it. We do want to be consistent. We do want, if we push for policy and we get one, we should then follow it. And we're talking about less than 0.5% of cost. We're looking at something that is, I don't go to school and I still use a sidewalk. So I do think that, those pieces, seems like it would be harder to be outside of the recommendation. Staff recommendation looks like it's well-reasoned and thoughtful and in line with everything that we've done with no significant cost, no operational cost, no major issue. We're just putting a little more concrete that someone's going to have to shovel. Is that right?
It'd just be nice if I put in a brand new sidewalk there, if the city would also connect that sidewalk to somewhere in the very near future, rather than 15 years from now. Or even 10 years from now. I mean, if the cities had plans to say, hey, within the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to build a sidewalk right next to this one, then that makes sense, But if the city says, hey, it might be 10, 15 years before we put a sidewalk next to this sidewalk, that doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you. Anything further? All right, I'm going to close the public hearing, and commissioners, thoughts, motions?
You know, I'd like to move staff. I guess I'm open to amendment if we want, but I mean, this is consistent with what we've done. There is no significant cost impact, even though we're not even supposed to be considering cost impact in this case. It is getting us on the right path. I guess I would move staff on this. I don't see a reason why there's impeding anyone by not.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I just, maybe Bert or Jason, someone could, there are a lot of new commissioners that maybe missed some information about the sidewalk committee and what came out of that, and what is priority one. So if we could send that out, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, we have a map that shows the priority ones, priority twos, priority threes sidewalks, so we can send that out.
Perfect. That will help you. All right, there's a motion on the table from Chris to move staff. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you. Motion carries. And are there any committees or directors' reports tonight? Yeah.
The only thing I was going to mention is that for our next two meetings, there will be a 5:30 session. So before the April 21st meeting, we're going to have a presentation on the Southwest Infrastructure Study that the city's engineering department is doing. And then before the May 5th Plan and Zoning Commission, we're going to have a presentation from the finance director on TIF and urban renewal. Yeah, they'll be in this room at 5:30. Yeah. And that's all I had.
Thank you.
All right.
Adjourn.